Thank you very much. Okay, I'm very happy to be following Tin because he's also a Manchester United supporter like me. 2 more games they win, and I will also cut my hair just like that guy on TikTok. Okay, put your hand up if you're going to the Smarties Gala dinner this evening. All right, so it doesn't seem that so many people are going this evening who are here during the day. I saw a few hands, not so many. So this is the inferior version of going to the gala dinner, that I will be identifying themes that I saw by watching the jury members and the way the discussions and how they were casting their votes. And I'll just be looking at trends and themes more than anything else. One thing that I won't be doing is giving away who the winners were, which makes this a little bit more difficult to make it interesting for you. So I'll do my best. Okay, so one thing that I identified this year is the sheer variety in terms of not just the entries, but also the winners of Smarties this year. Not only did they come from a whole number of different categories. I mean, a few years ago, because I've been doing this role for quite a number of years now, so it's I guess one of the benefits of that is I can really see how things have changed and how the digital marketing industry in Vietnam is evolving very, very quickly. Now, it used to be dominated by just purely FMCG brands, which, in terms of the entries and the winners, but that's really gone away now, and what I see here on the visual is a whole number of different categories. Not only that, but it used to be dominated by purely international brands. There's a lot more local players and also regional players which are winning the awards now. And also not just in terms of the advertisers, but also in terms of like the media advertising agencies. There's a lot more variety in terms of campaigns which are well recognized and positively perceived by the jury members. Okay. So the first theme that I identified that was coming up in a large number of the successful entries, I get a tab card on this. I've called it that brands which were able to disrupt the status quo, or campaigns that were able to disrupt the status quo. By that, they weren't just doing the simple thing. They weren't doing things like, right, okay, we've got a lot of digital tech that we want to employ, so we want to drive awareness and basically make some progress up the funnel. They were a lot more specific and targeted than that. One of the things that I really identified was like categories which are typically very, very rational and very functional, where successful entries were taking a surprisingly emotional route in that. I mean, still within Vietnam, if you see a lot of campaigns, they are rooted still on being more functional. It's one of the characteristics of Vietnam compared to other markets, where consumers are really looking for what's in it for me from a very rational perspective. But that's really starting to change now. And ones that used to be like that, campaigns that were rooted on the functional superiority, the benefit of it, were showing a lot more emotion involved in it. Another way in which campaigns were looking at disrupting the status quo is a lot more focus on looking very, very deeply into the data that they have to identify growth opportunities. This might be from their own CRM database, or it might be by consumer insights. And also, none of the winners really were looking to take a safe and easy choice for the reasons that I just mentioned earlier. Okay, so let me try and explain what I mean by this. Until recently, and I would also argue up until last year, there were a lot of entries into Smarties, and also some that did well, which kind of followed a simple formula, which is, right, okay, so we're going to be targeting Gen Z because they like digital. And what should we do? Okay, so it's a music video, because we know Gen Z love music videos. They might throw in a famous influencer into that, and it's all very lively and very, very entertaining, and maybe the influencer or the talent with the music video thrust the brand in front of consumers, to drive like general progress up the funnel. So this last year, and especially the years before, but up until last year, this was really featured very, very heavily in the entries which went in front of the jury. But the number of entries like that this year has vastly decreased. I can hardly remember any like this. And actually, it's one of the things that I highlighted when I was making this talk last year, that like to look to diversify away from just having this sole approach to digital marketing. Okay, so I hinted before about moving campaigns that were successful were based on a genuine human insight. And that was really, really evident this year, that very often they, not just looking through the data, but really understanding a very, very specific objective of the campaign which they've developed, and also showing a high level of what I call creativity in the way that they're amplifying that to consumers. So I don't mean creativity just in terms of producing a nice, strong video. I mean in terms of the way in which they are basically targeting consumers, using technology. All kinds of different technologies were employed: gamification, augmented reality, virtual reality, AI, which I will come to in a bit more detail later on, geo-targeting. Very often I saw like discussions based around the signals with high levels of personalization. And also real-time was also a real trend that would fit into this today. So the campaigns weren't lazy. They were very, very well thought out, extremely creative in the way that they were employing so many different technologies which explains their success. Also, following on from the same point, right, I also observed that there were a number of campaigns which were really looking for growth opportunities, focused on identifying something, a consumer need, that a consumer hadn't previously thought about, right? Really, maybe a niche thing or a very, very specific thing, but really the campaigns were very, very targeted at that. There was also a slightly different thing as well about a number of successful campaigns that I identified were focused on making a purchase decision a lot easier for consumers, right? Not only were they advertising the brand, but they were going through the process of the decision-making to take a lot of the pain and hardship away from actually purchasing it. Also, there was pretty frequent usage of specific Vietnamese rituals or customs. I won't go into too much detail about what they were, but they were playing into Vietnamese culture, things that resonated with consumers, and amplifying them. Yeah, also this morning, I've heard talk about authenticity as well on a couple of the talks that were given before. And this also came across quite strongly. There were a number of campaigns as well, where it was focused not just on celebs or famous influencers, but normal consumers, normal people, and celebrating them. So authenticity was definitely something which was coming across this year. All right. Okay, so what did we see less of this year? All right. So I talked about the Gen Z targeting by music videos already. So I won't go into more detail about this. This one was very surprising, right? In previous years, I've identified that so many campaigns are based around tech, activating tech in some shape or form. they were still there, but they weren't there in as much numbers, much less frequently featured and activated by brands this year. I think it's because, I wouldn't say the campaigns for tech are done, but in terms of the creative ways of trying to amplify tech, it's all been done before, and I think brands are looking for other opportunities to grow outside the most obvious one of tech. So that was a bit surprising. Music videos as well. Again, just because there's so much more levels of creativity in the tech that people are employing, the way that they're trying to get across their campaign, just like music videos wouldn't feature as much. The other thing, actually, which I only thought about last night, after I submitted this presentation, is that there were also a lot fewer campaigns that were focusing on playing into Vietnamese national pride. They were still there, but nowhere near as numerous as before. I mean, I know that national pride is something which brands so often tap into, and also resonates really strongly with consumers. But I just think out the fact that this year the campaigns were so much more sophisticated and nuanced compared to before, that those ones were featured a lot less heavily in the campaigns, which the honorable jury members liked the most and voted as being winners. Okay? Well, no big surprise here. AI is absolutely everywhere. But what was really surprising last year when I gave this talk, actually at the Smarties Gala rather than MMA Impact, is that last year everybody was talking about AI, and I was so surprised that amongst the winners last year, there was only one campaign which actually highlighted AI within their winning, something which was a successful campaign. There was only one. Whereas this year, there was a lot of campaigns featuring AI, a lot of them which they used it not just for developing the more efficient targeting, personalization, but also in terms of developing dynamic creatives and higher levels of personalization. So whereas last year, just 12 months ago, there's a lot of talk about AI, but not really used in campaigns, now it's absolutely everywhere. It just shows the speed of progress in terms of the adaptation of the technology amongst the marketing community within Vietnam. Another thing I identified as well was the use of the client's own, the advertiser's own database, using CRM databases in particular. Really, really clever, very, very specific ways of doing that. There's a number of campaigns which talked about segmentation of the consumers using their own database. We saw a lot of dynamic targeting based on things such as weather conditions, for example, the need states, pollution levels, would you believe, all right? And also in terms of serving the dynamic creatives. Brand partnerships was another area that was heavily featured. Not as heavily as something such as AI, but there were a lot of mentions about campaigns where they're looking for partnerships with, let's say, similar kind of products addressing a similar need for consumers, not necessarily in the same category, where they develop a symbiotic relationship. Also, even though every campaign, of course, it had a digital component of it, but they did very, very well where they also employed offline together with online as well. Some campaigns were 100% digital, but ones that did well tended to work well with in-store aspects, outdoor media as well in particular. And of course, no surprise here that most of the successful campaigns used the three big platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And Actually, I just did a quick survey before I developed this presentation, which matches pretty well in terms of the extent to which consumers access these different platforms to be able to stay up to date with things, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And you can see in particular, Facebook featured in 17 of the winners, and 50% for YouTube and TikTok as well. So they were typical campaigns were using multi-platforms. So it shows the level of sophistication which has gone into them. So summarizing, because I think my time is now up, what were the characteristics of the goal winners? A clear identification of a consumer insight, maybe also tapping into their own CRM database, finding a way to disrupt consumers from their everyday habits, using online and off channels symbiotically, and also using technology and high levels of personalization and also real time as well. My final slide in terms of what are my predictions for next year based on what we saw this year. No surprise that I think AI will be ingrained in almost every single submission and winner next year. I think we'll see more local winners. So I think we're going to see more tonight compared to previous years. Greater focus on authenticity, not just in terms of using celebrities and influencers, famous influencers, which has been very commonly employed in previous years. There will still be a lot of targeting of Gen Z, but I think there'll be more targeting outside of Gen Z. And we saw trends of that this year. There are quite a number of winners where they were targeting very specific groups, not just Gen Z. And also the final one, something that we saw this year, even more so this year, very, very sharp targeting based on a very specific consumer insight. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Worthington, once again, for all